Hello, Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's April 26, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Larkin Higgins. Where are you calling in from, Larkin?
I'm calling in from Los Angeles.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Okay, the best thing for a human being? Wow. Aren't there thousands of books written on this? Like pick one. I, coming out of almost 3 years of pandemic isolation, I would have to go with connection.
Yeah. Connection's a great word, and that's what we're doing right now. And
Yeah.
again, just to stress, it's these questions are just in need of your hunch or your guess.
Hmm.
Whatever. It's just having fun. So the second question is, what is your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Well, I would have to say, through lived experience, that having a gradual connection, there's that word again, to bits and pieces of information from various sources, and then taking these into the brain and the body. So eventually, there's a spark, an idea, or some kind of revelation, aha moment, something that tickles the brain.
I like that. Your favorite form of information sounds like James Joyce, epiphanies in everydayness, a spark.
It's so interesting. Yeah, I was lucky to be at the what is it, the Centennial of Bloomsday in Dublin, Dublin in 2004. So celebrating the 100th anniversary of that walk in Dublin in the book Ulysses, and that was an amazing experience, I have to say. I love the fact that in Dublin, you can be in a bar and talk about literature to anybody. And
Hello.
you're not considered an oddity.
Yeah. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
To remember.
Yeah. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Well, I think it depends upon how your brain works. Um, in my case, collecting information is innate because it is my way of remembering and gathering and overlapping and figuring out things. So it's definitely innate. It's constant. I mean, even when I was a girl and I'd be listening, maybe you will recognize these old radio stations, KRLA and KFWB, and I'd have
Yeah.
3x5 cards next to my bed in an old recipe metal box, and I would write the lyrics of the songs, as I would hear them. And of course, I would never finish because I would be listening and trying to write the lyrics down. And then the next time I heard it, I'd add to the lyrics until I finally got all the lyrics to the song. And so that's kind of, compulsive collecting to understand.
I love that anecdote. Beautiful, beautiful anecdote. Do thoughts create emotions? Did you hear that? Do thoughts create emotions?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Ooh, hello.
Yeah.
They all create emotions.
Yeah, we're breaking up a little. I'll ask the question again.
Sure.
Do thoughts create emotions?
Yes, yes. I mean, sometimes we have to learn how to tame our thoughts because of the emotions they cause us. So, yeah, absolutely.
Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
Until I visualize it.
Yeah, very
I'm
good.
I'm a visual learner, and to me, visual things are language, and so it's inclusive in the way that I process. So that's how that works.
Can humans think without language?
Again, I mean, language is this huge collage of possibilities. I mean, mathematics is a language. And then, of course, there's so many different languages that people speak that also appear visual. And, uh, when I think about Vasily Kandinsky and how color was symbols to him, and had meaning. And so it's just, a language is just endless. My sister and I, when we can't find a noun, which sometimes happens more often than we would like, we pantomime it. And we totally understand each other.
That is very good because you anticipated the next question. Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community. Larkin, what do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
Well, besides pantomime,
Yes.
um, often it's changing the tone of the voice,
Yeah.
because there's something in all the different ways you can say a sentence or a word that gets taken in differently, empathetically, harassing. I mean, just by changing the tone, you're sending the message that, okay, something's not working. Let's remodulate.
Yeah. Very wise words. It's rare that I get that answer, and it's very accurate. Change the tone, modulate. Very beautiful answer. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
What was the first word?
Are we more thinking
Thinking,
beings or feeling beings?
feeling.
Yeah.
Having lived a life and also been a teacher, teaching prof for several decades, and being very aware of all the different ways we learn as humans, I really think it's about 50-50.
Yeah.
Some people think first and, try to make a case for it, for their thought to work, and other people feel it. And I really truly think it's about 50-50.
Very good. Two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Oh, I personally truly think so.
Yeah.
Because the soul, is a big thing. It's comprehensive, and it has needs for understanding. And so, yes.
Very good. The second question is can machines think?
Can a machine think?
Yeah.
I hope the audience is aware that it's hard for me to hear you, and that's why I'm going in real close. Can a machine think? Wow. Um, in my earlier days, it just happened that I went to Venice High School, and in the 12th grade, there was a scholarship for someone who they thought was promising to learn how to use Fortran to program. And the only reason is because I got A's in math, but I hadn't gotten to trigonometry yet because I hadn't figured out yet I was a visual learner. So I was doing great with geometry, and I would add all the numbers on paper, not in my head, so I had pages and pages of adding all these numbers. But because I had a kind teacher, and even though I was the last one to finish, I'd always get an A plus because I got everything right. So I thought, oh, she's a math person, right? So they gave me this scholarship. And that's when I learned that I could not think backwards. Because if you're a computer programmer, basically you have to think all the way backwards to be able to program it, which I cannot do. It's also hard for me to memorize. So that was the end of my math career, which I'm glad, but I also still have a love for it.
Yeah.
But in those days, you just fed in those cards. It was yes, no, yes, no. So it was like, of course, no, computers can't think. It's the people that are making them think, right? But nowadays, things are kind of wiggly. I mean, there's a reason now somebody went, hold it for a moment on the AI. It might be getting a little out of control. Let's maybe we need some guidelines. So I'm not sure. That whole HAL thing, 2001, that was the first time I got a little creeped out by computers.
Very good. Wiggly is a word we should feed into chat bots. Like,
Yeah.
what is wiggly, Miss Hello chat box? So, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
To me, pursuing meaning brings happiness. So I can't really have happiness without meaning. So obviously, I'm pursuing meaning first. And then if I'm really lucky, I again get that beautiful tickle in my brain soul. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's it. That's it. Now I feel better.
Great words, Larkin. I love tickle. So,
Thank you.
does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness?
Oh my gosh. That's kind of a metaphysical question, I think. Um, I think it could be both, with just the varying experiences. I mean, I can think, and I obviously get consciousness, but sometimes there's things floating in the air and in the cosmos, and something appears that I didn't think. I don't have a consciousness of the thinking, but something appeared. And so I definitely think I'm a fan of both.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Sometimes I'm thinking it's speed of thought, being an ADD person. It's like, whoa, stop. But I think scientists would say it's the speed of light.
Well, we met on poetry grounds. Audre Lorde is a poet who said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, again, having lived a long life already and hope to continue, I would say subversion.
Wow, what a tool. That's my favorite. What new toy do you suggest?
um, you mean to like add peace to the whole world, or?
Sounds good to me.
I don't know. I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but it would be so nice if we were each handed, at birth, and we could take it all through adulthood, something we could just twirl like a ladle, and and whatever it did, the colors, the shapes, whatever, would bring a smile on our face, and we would just be able to go on, in in a copacetic manner.
You know those little spinny things? There's this new
Yeah,
toy.
yeah.
My friend said, to save the world, he said, well, leaders of countries should just sit down and eat a pizza together instead of fighting wars.
It was like, what?
My friend said the leaders of countries should eat a pizza together rather than fight wars. So there's your
There is something
spinning.
to the mouthfeel of a pizza. I get that. Not just the
It's
taste,
also
but the
this,
mouthfeel.
yeah, and it's also spinning the pizza pie,
Yeah, yeah.
spinning. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Oh my goodness. I sure have to be careful not to put the news on right before I go to bed, because that causes me great worry. So I'd have to probably say, yeah, what's going around in the world brings me great worry. Um, and of course, just I know we've had a whole bunch of rain here, but still, that hasn't answered the question of us running out of water. They're already worried about the Colorado River and how we're going to get water. So, after our great rains here, so there's all those things, and and I worry about the health of my friends, and all the regular stuff. And can I? How long can I afford to live in Los Angeles?
Yeah. Well, Larkin, I love your laugh, and that's what this series is all about: is having fun and laughing. So I really appreciate after every question you laugh and then you answer it.
Oh, I'm so glad you appreciate it, because I got kicked out of a bar once in Venice for laughing too loud. Um, and sometimes people don't think I take things seriously if I laugh, but to me, laughter is a way of it's many things for me. First, it can be delight. It can be, once again, that tickle when I hear different juxtapositions of words. They delight me, and that makes me laugh. Um, Also, just quirky things in the world, and often some that I can't control, that will make me laugh, because it's like, oh my god, what can we do? So it's kind of the way I have operated in the world. I got this laugh from both my grandmothers, and our neighbors. I live not too far from Venice High School on the south side of Venice Boulevard, and it, when there would be parties at our house and both the grandmothers were there, the next day the neighbors would come out and go, "Oh, we know you had a party because we could hear your grandmothers laughing all the way down the street."
I spend my life waiting for the light to turn at Lincoln and Venice. What was your cross street? Venice Boulevard and what?
Oh,
Approximately.
where we lived?
Yeah.
it was only it was a street that was only 2 blocks long, Barbara Avenue. So it was just a little bit. Uh, it was like, oh, maybe a block west of Centinela, and a block or two south of Venice Boulevard.
Great.
It's been a while. The
Yeah,
corner of Wasatch and Barbara.
I know that. I know it well. Yes. And
When we
so,
moved there, it was still dirt. The streets were still dirt, and the
wow,
and Venice Boulevard had a dirt divide. Crazy,
amazing,
huh?
amazing.
Yeah, they bought the house for $9,000.
Whoa,
It was a little house, very little, but still, in Venice for a little house, you know. This wasn't Venice, though. This was technically Mar Vista on the
Mar
south side of Mar
Vista.
Vista,
Yeah,
not the north side, which is
yeah,
different.
yeah. You know the joke. Men are from Venice. Women are from Mar Vista.
That's the first time I ever heard that joke. That's funny.
Yeah, good variation on literature, right?
Yes.
Okay, McLuhan learned from a poet, Ezra Pound, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so we can learn to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I ask you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Oh, I think I'll take a sip on that. Hmm. That that is so convoluted because it also depends on the medium. How some artist media is more out there, like film,
Yeah,
and an intimate artist book, or an exhibit where only so many people go and make the drive to a museum or a gallery, drive across town, have to park, and all of that. It's less accessible. So I really think art and its message has to do with accessibility and how many see it or not, when it comes to making a point to as many people. And sometimes it has to do with size, unfortunately. When
yeah,
someone makes a huge sculpture and it's driven across town, many people are going to see it and experience and wonder what the message is. So I'd say that I think some artists are listened to,
yeah,
hmm and others are not.
yeah. In Larkin, what you said is amazing because I was able to hear you recite one of your poems on YouTube. So I
Oh,
so that was a good experience for me to see you put up two visuals that corresponded with a poem as you recited it. And I didn't have to, ride my bike down to Beyond Baroque and hear you do it live. But it's a different experience, but it's pretty close because I saw your face and I heard your words. Do artists have moral obligation?
I this one is a hard one for me because I think it kind of depends sometimes on your circumstances. Um, if it's really really hard for you, an artist, depending, financially, or how they may or may not be supported. So artists that aren't supported, that may, you know, not be financially fluid. It's so hard to even be able to make the work. That how dare someone say you must make it so it does this?
Yeah.
But you know, if one is blessed with just having more opportunity, and you know, can get their work out there more freely, it's going to reach a lot of people. And I just think that sometimes the context needs to be clear enough so its message is taken in a helpful way.
Yeah. Hopeful. Yeah. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or old ideas?
Fear is a big issue. I'm working on that. I think that's a long a long haul working on that fear thing. Um, Again, you know, I'm not so. I mean, I did terrible on SAT and GRE tests because I'm a collage and spiral and
Yeah.
rhizomic thinker,
Yeah.
and I weigh things back and forth. And so when I would take those tests, you know, like answer A, well, if I was a Buddhist, I'd answer it this way. If I was a this, I would answer it that way, and so on
Yeah.
and so on. And so it could have four correct answers,
Yeah.
not just one. And um, there are some intriguing old ideas that, you know, like one is silver and the other's gold. Make new friends, but keep the old ones. There are some oldies but goodies out there. And there's some stunning new ones, some silvery, stunning new ideas. So I think it's a mixture.
Yeah. Very good. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them? Can you conjure up your earliest memory or one of them?
Um, the one I still remember is I was probably around 2 years old, and I was crawling on the floor in my parents' living room, and because they were both artists. They actually met in an art class at Lincoln Junior High School in Santa Monica, and there were these little pieces of cotton with color on them. You know, I'm crawling around and I'm coming across these cotton balls with color, and more color and color. And what I mean, it was probably my first lesson of all the colors that one can make. And it turned out that my parents together had a business of hand coloring large black and white murals. And they did this in our little living room in that same little house in Mar Vista. And so they'd take the cotton and put Marshall oils. That was the brand. That was an oil coloring that you would rub with cotton balls and in little areas with Q-tips. And you know, they would do that and it would just fall to the ground, and they'd get another color, and they were left all over the floor. And I'm just like going, wow. I mean, it was like prizes. It was like candy, except I didn't eat it. Of course, I fortunately knew better, but it was like prizes, you know, like Easter egg hunting, you know, all over. And but so many colors.
Yeah.
So
Well, tell me within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, Someone who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Well, I'd have to say equally my parents when it comes to the family part. Uh, one of them was sort of the lesson of making do by being inventive. So my mother on the weekend, she would often bake, and maybe she was baking a pie. And if she couldn't find the rolling pin, she'd take a wine bottle and put flour around it and then use the wine bottle to roll out the dough. And I just thought, how cool is that? It's like you can't find the right tool, you find something like it, be
Right.
inventive. and and of course my dad, he was an eternal student and just loved learning, and reading, so I'd look at the bookcase and there would be the portrait of the artist as a young man by James Joyce. There'd also be a Kandinsky uh, book, so as a little girl, those were the beginning of my literature and art, Kandinsky and James Joyce.
Wow.
I didn't like start at one thing and then go. It's like that's where we started.
That is amazing.
And then for
That,
someone outside of the family, it was I was at Venice High School, and maybe it was like 11th grade, and it was a literature class, and the teacher was a woman, and she said, Larkin, why don't you read that poem out loud? And I'd never done that in my life, in front of people. And I took it and I read it out loud, and there was this pause, and I thought, oh, I probably did it wrong. And she says, oh, now I'm going to cry. Sorry. She says, now, isn't that amazing to be able to hear a person who can really read a poem out loud? Very good, Larkin. And it was like, I didn't even know that was a thing, you know, and that I could be good at it and that it had meaning.
yeah.
It's like, thank you. I exist and I did something. So, yeah.
But but it sort of nudged you on to your career and pursuing poetry and the importance of poetry being read out loud. That's two things.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And sort of my
Did your
dual career of making
yeah,
visual and writing.
yeah, yep. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Um, let's see. When I was a kid, I was sort of surrounded by a mixture of spiritual and religious and philosophical practices. I mean, of course, in my neighborhood, it was very mixed and diverse. So I'm very grateful for that. And both of my parents were inspired by Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. I think they even, used a part of it in their wedding. And and of course, Vasily Kandinsky was really a theosophist, and Dad loved Kandinsky at the time when we were kids. And then as we got a little older, I think our family kind of thought we need to attend a place for a community. And the closest church was a congregational church on top of Overland Hill. You know how when you turn left on Overland from Venice, it starts to go uphill? It was right on top. So it was very close by. It was a congregational church, but it was super open, and questions were encouraged, and questions about science and religion. And there'd be guest speakers like Ray Bradbury, who I know. How lucky was I? And his nephew was a member of the church, and so I played volleyball with him. And it just was. I mean, I love Ray Bradbury because, I mean, he learned how to write by going to the Central Library,
Yeah.
and but also our Reverend was marching with Martin Luther King, and as a family, we wanted to support that as well. So it was, that time period in my life, it was really good and open and healthy. And, later on in the early 90s, then the Dalai Lama came to Pasadena for a one whole week teaching from like 9 to 5 every day of the week. And I participated in that. And that was very profound. Felt like I was floating off of the chair with all the chanting. Um, uh, but to be honest, I still feel like, all these spiritual paths have something to offer. And so, take what works for the moment,
Yeah.
whether it's the vocabulary, the ritual, um, you know, eh, that's how it works for me.
Do you pray?
Um, I sometimes do. And if somebody asks me to pray for them, I will. And if somebody wants me to send metta for them, I will do that. Um, and when something is a little scary, I will pray. It just makes me feel like, okay, if 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 the spirits are out there and want to help me, you have permission. Please do.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
See, knowing something about the brain. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I'm constantly researching because I find it fascinating. And life can sometimes be hard. And so it's like, how does the brain work? And, you know, sometimes people have crossed wires and they didn't ask for that, you know? And so, I mean, it's horrible that that happened to them, and maybe they're acting out and they're doing incredible damage in the world or hurting people or worse. Uh, but I don't know if some kind of evil flew into their body. I just somehow, I so far, I can't get into that.
Yeah.
So far. Mhm.
Yeah. And how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? First, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Hmm. Well, ignoring them sure doesn't work. Nope. So you can't just, no, they'll go away. We know many people didn't just go away. So, um, so I don't know what the answer is, but not ignoring them.
Does punishment work?
Boy, it's so interesting when you watch different practices with kids and how they turned out. And there are some kids because they had repercussions by doing something bad, and they literally did not do it again. So, and they never did it again, and so that can work for some people. Sometimes for hypersensitive people, I happen to be kind of hypersensitive. um, I need to be sat down. When I was a girl, I should have been sat down and just go, well, this is what happened. And if you did it this way, then you would have had this result instead, which is a much better result. That would have worked for me. Hmm.
Yeah. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I think it's a form of translation. Um, it's like more, the more a story is told, or some kind of philosophical structure in different ways, the more people can digest it. So it's just like translating a book into, more than one language. More people are going to get it, and that's where the goodness comes from.
Yeah. What first attracted you to pursue being a poet and an artist? Like, where's your tipping points? I know your parents are creative and they're raising you in an art filled world, but where did you go? That's what I want to do for my life calling.
Well, I wanted it to do it all along, but as like a lot of parents, when their kids want to go into a creative field, they get scared that we can't make any money. So they actually didn't allow me to be an art major at Venice High School. And in those days, you had to pick a major, and they would not allow me to be an art major. But because I am creative or inventive, make that circle around to see if I can do it another way. I I I chose college preparatory liberal arts mathematics. And so, because I was liberal arts, I could take an art class every semester of some kind. So
Yeah.
I still got my art in. And so I could still have that if I wanted to pursue it on a college level, if I needed to go that route. And so I was always sneaking in doing the art. So my parents wouldn't be mad at me. Sorry. And then eventually, I actually went into a medical career. My parents, sent me to, this sort of paramedical training and being a medical assistant. And I did that for some years. But at night, I would go to Santa Monica College and take art classes. Uh, so I never let it go. And then one day my dad said to me, Larkin, if you want to go to Cal State Long Beach and join your sister, because he allowed her, she was the second girl. So I guess they'd learned by then not to say no. And so she was already there. And I joined her, and we were both art majors at Cal State Long Beach, and got my BA. And, from there, and just kept going, because I realized I wanted to teach college level. And so that's when I got graduate degrees after that. So the
When
good news is that I have I have more when you teach college, and you have students that are all different majors. When I have biology majors, I could say, oh, my favorite cell is an eosinophil, and because it's so colorful with those sparkly orange dots, and they'd go, oh, you know about those. And so I could bring in the visual even to my non-art majors, because I had all this other experience in other areas that I was made to do to detract me from the art.
Larkin, when you're making a piece of Larkin art or writing a Larkin poem or blending them, what role does intention play in your creative process?
What role does what play?
Intention.
Intention. Oh, I'm one of those people that seems to work always with intention. And I have an idea, and then I have to match the idea or concept to the medium. That's why I keep switching medium, because every idea, sometimes I have to match it with a different medium, which is why a lot of people don't know what to call me. Interdisciplinary artist and poet. Okay. and cross genre artist and poet. So I match it, if I'm dealing with a concept that has to do with fluidity, then it needs to be a fluid medium. If it's more architectural, then, I did a whole text piece on using, the blue lines, drawing out the map to this language using blue lines and brown lines. Because one of my many jobs before becoming a full-time teaching prof, I drew the cockpit panels for the DC-10. Okay, with mechanical inking and the templates, the isometric ovals, and then hand lettered with Leroy lettering all the altimeter dials and the blueprints. Of my drawings were what sold the airplanes, like what kind of cockpit do you want? Here's one. Do you want to change anything? Then we splice in and redraw the altimeter dial the way they wanted. And, so, that's crazy. I probably had 100 jobs before I had my full-time teaching job. And so it does make me well-rounded. I don't know if I
Well,
answered your question.
no, you answered it fine, and it leads to when you're writing a Larkin poem or making a piece of Larkin art, how much are you thinking of your viewer or your listener? Duchamp said there's no art without an audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
So
it
how much
depends.
yeah, go ahead.
It depends on what I'm making. When I make some visual or concrete poetry, sometimes it's very abstract and it's playing with language in such a elastic way that I am doing it for the pleasure of my mind and how it looks visually. And I'm okay if not anyone gets it or if a few people get it. I'm okay with that. If I'm writing something that it's very important for the meaning to be clear, or the analogy, or the parody, or the satire, uh, then obviously I've got to read it and edit in such a way that it will be clear, that it's not so abstract that no one will ever get it. Because then what's the point if I'm trying to say something? So I'm both.
McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extends our teeth. In a shutter and a camera, a projector extends our eyelid. And even non-tangible, say religion or philosophy, might extend our consciousness. What does the scissors extend for you? You're a collage artist. You cut and paste, assemblage. What does scissors or the cutting utensil extend for you? What humanness?
All of a sudden I'm seeing Edward Scissorhands, which, I've been using the scissors since I was a girl. I made my own paper dolls, I made them all myself and dressed them the way I wanted to, not what came with the kit.
Yeah.
And so they weren't all wearing pink. And being a girl in the time frame I was, it's like, no, don't give me pink again. um, but boy, they're everything,
Yeah.
literally. And from making my own confetti to they're the instrument that gives me control to rearrange.
Yes. Very good. I asked a poet, when I asked this poet from Italy that question, I said, what does the pen extend for you? What humanness? And he said, tears.
Oh, yeah.
And so, what is the function of poetry?
Oh my goodness. Again, there's lots of theories about that. A lot have written about it. Of course, most people will say it's self-expression, um, but sometimes that implies just a spewing out of language, as opposed to making it. And again, I can do both, and other people can do both, and there's a place for both. I also like constructing. Constructing with the language. So the all the words, even just the letters, are fuel and elastic elements to make something. And I'm from the day where I could hold language in my hand. When I was at Cal State Long Beach, I got to hand set the metal type, for the platen presses. And when you hold it in your hand, and you get to play with the periods and the commas and the exclamation points, and all of the things that are possible to lay out as symbols of a language. It's just endless. And they don't have to be in a line. They can be in a curve. They could be scattered in an open field, all these letters, these words, capitals and lowercase and upside down. And, so I that's a form of constructing, not just spewing out
Yeah.
language. Again, nothing against spewing out, because there
Yeah.
are places for that.
Larkin, you're a comprehensivist. You see the big picture. I appreciate you understand. Understanding is seeing the big picture. And so
Yeah,
Leo
thank you.
Bersani, yeah, Leo Bersani did a study of the symbolist poet Mallarmé, and he said a statement that I'm curious your reaction to. The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. Any comments? And I can read it again if you
Could
want.
you say that one more time?
There's a couple words that are a little extreme, but just the overall thought. The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition.
Oh, interesting. Wow. I'm not quite sure about this question. My being a visual learner, I'm seeing the language all over the place in front of me, and I'm thinking, what sustains it and what takes it apart. And of course, I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan of Mallarmé.
yeah,
I just love his work,
yeah,
and he broke apart poetry
yeah.
in beautiful, interesting, and conceptual and meaningful ways. Um, so I'm not quite sure how to answer that. To be honest, it's so big.
Yeah,
It's so big. I mean, I'm just seeing language everywhere right now, and going, what what ruins it? What keeps
yeah,
it together?
yeah,
I think it's only the people who say that poetry is meaningless that hurts poetry.
yeah, Yeah,
and
no,
think
that's
that it's like I
that
can't tell you how many times when
yeah.
somebody says, "What do you do?" and I said, "Oh, I write poetry," and then quickly they go, "Oh, I hate academic poetry." And I thinking, wow, what does that mean? What does
Mean,
that
right,
even mean?
right. That's Oscar
Like,
Wilde.
you
Yeah,
know? And I think, okay, well, it was nice knowing you, you know?
yeah,
I guess I don't have anything to offer here. But do I write academic poetry? Maybe not, you know? I
yeah,
don't know. It's more maybe experimental at times.
yeah. Um, Oscar Wilde said even bad poetry can be sincere.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's the beauty is like who sets the standards on what's good poetry and what's bad poetry? It's like the
Right, right.
field I'm in is experimental film. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's like, but Mallarmé really nailed it. He said, don't paint the thing itself, paint the effect it produces.
Yeah, that kind of I have to bring up Kandinsky again because that's sort of his philosophy. It's like if you're painting a realistic reality, you're not making any interpretations of
Yeah,
it. You're basically just recording it. Now, for some
yeah,
people, like my dad started off, Kandinsky was his big thing. But as he got older, it became important that wherever he was, and he was lucky that he could travel different countries and
yeah,
all, he would bring a miniature little watercoloring book and he'd take his brushes and actually break the handle. So he'd have this tiny little brush that he could carry around with a little tiny palette, and he could record what he was seeing, as a memory,
yeah.
instead of taking a picture. So I mean,
You,
it was pretty much realistic, but and it was very different than his earlier work, and so that was important. So I get that why somebody would want to paint a portrait of their dear one or someone well known, to
yeah,
record it and make it look realistic. But you can also take a photograph. Um,
yeah,
but I just see more layers when something is translated into a different kind of expression, which could be labeled many things. Its energy, its vibration, um, a stylistic evolution, all sorts of things.
yeah. That's really good. What you just said, you taught me a lot. It's like Cezanne or Matisse said, if you put your painting in the bushes and it blends in, it's a good painting. and 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 then you know um Robert Williams, the
Wait, say that one more
under,
time.
the underground comic Robert Williams said, if the painting matches the couch, it's art. If it demands attention, it's culture.
Oh, I like that.
Isn't that great?
I really like that in a crazy way.
Yeah. So this is about self-expression. Cecil Taylor's avant-garde jazz, he said, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Two of my heroes in experimental film said there is no self-expression. So is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, environments, and culture are present?
Oh, so more self-expression or more like what's floating
Vehicle.
around there. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would have to say a combination, because if the
Yeah,
artist is sort of the vehicle that this art is coming out of, that's still part of them, but then they're being influenced, not necessarily by reaction, so they're not necessarily copying what they're seeing out there. They're reacting to it.
yeah,
So when and I think about different artists and how they've reacted, say, to ecology, what's
yeah.
going on in the world. Um, it's being it's coming from them, and they find it necessary to share that uh, subject matter in an interesting way for an audience to take it in, so they can think about it and contemplate.
Really good, Larkin, and I really appreciate your time. You're very articulate. This is fun. So the follow-up question is, can art making be egoless?
Can art be made egoless?
Yeah, can art making be egoless?
Um, when I think about experimentation for the pure joy of it, it does not seem that the ego is there, because it's an experiment and one is literally accepting what comes,
Yeah,
and there isn't a a a, a, a title or anything uh, previously set upon it. So it's pure freedom. Um, so there's that kind of experimentation. I think it is egoless, because there's no there's no responsibility. It's just pure experiment, and not even having to claim it, because one isn't editing, right?
yeah,
Because it's humans that edit, and that's their scene responsibility. So that kind of art would be egoless. Uh, when one has to start editing, and that can be even simply, by how big the artwork is. I can't tell you how many times I've been at conferences where I'll be sitting in a circle and one person says, "Oh, my artwork was 16 by 20," and the next person, "Mine was 32 by 42. Mine was 68 by 72 inches." And I'm thinking, "Oh, does it all come to that again? How big it is?" I'm out of here. I'm out of here. So yeah, it can definitely be attached to ego. Okay, it's like, "Larkin, you're not making paintings big enough. Nobody's going to take you seriously." It's like, "Sorry, I got a tiny little house. I'm not in that bracket."
yeah. That's good. Do Duchamp says the artists of the future will only have to point. So it's like, yeah, that little speck on my laptop, that's my art.
Well,
What was
there's some truth to that.
Oh yeah. What was the motive of the cave artist? What was the motive of the cave artist?
Of the cave artist.
Yeah.
um Gosh, I would, I mean, they certainly did not have video games to play with. Okay. So it was like, okay, make fire, cook, make fire, cook, make fire, cook. Maybe we could do something else if we have some time in between there, so I think creativity is innate,
Yeah.
and in many different ways, whether somebody's cooking or whether they're painting rocks, or whatever it is. And I just think it went, "Oh, look at when I hit this rock, this powder comes out, and this particular rock, the powder is red, and this rock, the powder is blue, and wow, if we add water to it, and it's making is innate, and once you figure out you can make something with a material, it's just going to happen. And revel in that invention. And that's what keeps people alive.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be so-called art. It can be fixing a car, which somebody told you that it can't be. you know
Yeah. You'll love this one. Marsh McLuhan's favorite line is, "The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can."
oh, I definitely love that.
It's amazing.
Definitely. Yeah. And
What's
I
yeah,
mean, I was lucky to in 1997. It's like, where can I be for a while that costs less than Los Angeles? So for a month and a half, it cost me like $2,000, including my plane ticket to go to Bali, Vietnam and Thailand, and Java and all of that. $2,000 for everything for a month and a half. It was cheaper for me to leave, right? And so, but I didn't travel expensively, and I was staying in little places that were $4 a night, and you would just rinse out what you wore during the day and put it on the bush. By morning, it would be dry, and and I love, speaking of rituals, spiritual rituals, leaving flowers in front of the doors of places, and these lovely parades through the street honoring the different holidays, and flowers everywhere. I mean, everything they do is an art form,
yeah,
truly.
yeah,
And it'd be nicer if we all thought
totally.
in that way, wouldn't it?
Yes. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Oh gosh, wow. Hmm. I mean, I'm really pausing on this because I think they're both so important, both those traits and modes of operation in the world. Uh, when you think about Martin Luther King, he had conviction and kept with it. Um, and but then also compromise is such a, an important tool for peace. You know, and so I think again, I think it's 50-50.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements: luck, skill, and ambition? What played the biggest role in your accomplishments, second and third?
Luck, skill, or ambition? Wow. Luck, skill, or ambition? I'd have to say skill. I mean, I'm a slow learner, so I have to work really hard to learn something. Even learning a new word, I've got to write it out, say it out loud, experience the word. It's not just memorize it. So it takes me longer to do everything, and so the skill is well earned, and I work hard for it. So I'd have to say skill, and in fact, it seems that it pleases me to tackle something and learn it, because I'm absolutely an eternal student. You know, I,
Yeah.
I I never want to stop taking classes. When I say, "Oh, I'm taking a class," "Oh, I thought you were a teacher, not a student." Well, I'm both. Forever. And uh, luck. I was lucky because I had two really unique parents, stayed together. So there was that feeling that there was a home. So I guess that is luck, I mean, that, we don't pick our parents because we're born afterwards, right? So I think that was luck. What was the third one? Ambition.
Yeah.
Okay. Ambition's been a tough one for me. Because I'm not a good PR person for myself, which it seems these days it's a requirement. And I mean, even if somebody publishes your poetry book, you get this email that says, okay, now you must do all your PR. You must find your people to come to the reading. You must find, if you're a musician, you must have a mailing list and have all these people that follow you, and I'm not good at asking people to follow me, because to me, who is it that I should have followers when we're all equal? I guess I'm kind of like democratic in a lot of thinking, so ambition is only that I keep going. So if you define ambition that I don't give up, or I take a sidestep and make it a little something else, because this was kind of weird over here. So I'm going to make a diagonal over to something where I'm kind of doing that, but it's going to be renamed. Then I could say that I have ambition, like my
Yeah.
college preparatory liberal arts mathematics. That's how I got to take art classes.
There's a great line. It goes, the more you practice, the luckier you get.
Oh, I think that's probably true.
Yeah. And that's your skill. But T.S. Eliot, the poet, said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Huh. Well, I mean, technically, my inner dialogue is in English. Um, However, because English is so difficult, that when I'm trying to learn a word in another language, or learn a new word in English that I want to remember how to pronounce it, I will spell it out how it would be spelled in Spanish, because I can count on the pronunciation when I come back to it. Now, I'm not fluid in Spanish, but I just I know that if I write an E, it's going to be pronounced A because it's in Spanish, and that the I is E, but in English it can be 7 different pronunciations, and it's very confusing. So I prefer phonetically to write it in Spanish. So that would be like a technical inner language. But what did you mean exactly?
Well, you could, what metaphorically, what form is it in?
My inner language. Curiosity.
Yeah, very good. Is perception reality? Is
Yes. Yes. That's it. Yes.
that's it. That's it. My friend said, that's all you got.
No
Larkin,
explanation necessary.
yeah, you've been doing creativeness for many years. Tell me one element that stayed the same and one element that's changed. Being a creative person, tell me one element of your creativity that stayed the same, one that changed.
Okay. Well, with both my poetry and my art, um, there's always been a sense of doing some research whether it's research on the medium and how it works when it comes to something visual, and experimentation with it. But with writing poetry or any kind of text art, uh, I like to do some research about the subject content that I'm working with, to possibly borrow some more language that might not fall out of my mouth naturally, um, shake it up and make it more interesting and intriguing for myself. Um, that has been kind of consistent, but now I'm working on being less um, working on being more diagonal thinker in both the poetry and the visual work. So there's rarely a clean linear line, whether it's poetry or visual art. There's a sh- shifting, sometimes a big step, sometimes a turnaround, um, sometimes a conflation and a folding. Um, and so one, the viewer needs to jump over to get to the other side to make a connection.
Really
Did that
good.
make
That
sense?
that made a lot of sense. It reminded me of George Carlin said comedy is drawing a line and then crossing it.
Yeah. I love George Carlin. I just adored him.
Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength. Rather, we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Okay. I think in my day, and I don't actually share this to everybody, but here we are, because I think it's important for people to know that I had some learning challenges, but in my day they didn't screen students, so I would be doing homework till 2 in the morning, since like the third grade, trying to figure out things, drawing pictures to understand what the teacher said during the day, and but I did really well. But I took, from all the way to 2 in the morning, from, like third grade all the way through graduate schools to do my homework and write my papers, et cetera, et cetera. And I I learned what I was when I was teaching full time. Some students had a timer on, and they said, "Why do you have the timer on?" It was, well, so I know to only spend this much time thinking about this right here so I can go on to the next problem. Otherwise, I'll just keep going all over the place. I go, "Oh, well, I do that. What do you call it?" She goes, "Oh, ADD," and it's like, I mean, I've had this forever. My dad was, and my sister is. And so it's not like it's not like it's the buzzword now. I mean, when you
Yeah.
really have it, people get impatient with you. It's like, no, get to the point, Larkin, right? And so, but the point is, it's circling around because it's connected to all these other
Yeah.
things, and so I need to give you the background story so you know why I'm choosing this one.
Yeah.
And so it helped me to figure that out, and it helped me teach my students. So I knew that I should make a diagram on the board so those that are visual learners could see it and not me just talk it, because I knew I would lose maybe a third of the class if I didn't draw something on the board or write words. And I knew that some were more linear, so they needed a list, step one, step two, that just even writing on the board, they want to know which was first and which came second, and the more engineering mind. So in the end, I have a much greater understanding of all the different ways that the brain can process, and in which directions and which paces, and that semantics can be much broader too in many
Yeah.
ways. So that's what I think. At least for me, I've turned into a strength. There's still people that say Larkin, get to the point, and I can't do anything about that.
That's thank God we didn't get drugged because we had that. A lot of us, I mean, I'm hyperactive in the same way. I go on tangent city, in they call it non sequiturs. I live by non sequiturs. But but we didn't get drugged. Now the kids get
No, I didn't
drugged.
get drugged. I still don't take drugs, even when I figured it
I
out.
know, and the kids get drugged for that now, and that's
Hmm.
not good because the bottom line, Larkin, is it's called pattern recognition. You're studying patterns to get the big picture, comprehensive awareness, and so we got about 10 more minutes. This has really been fun.
It
There's
has
one.
been. Thank you. It's really, this time in my life is almost like the perfect time to be questioned about all these things, because it's just a nice way to to figure out where I was and where I've come. And so I'm just incredibly ecstatic that this has happened at this time in my life, this questioning. So thank you.
Thank you. So Hollis Frampton, experimental filmmaker, said, narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
So the question is, can you forget
Can
to die?
yes.
Okay. Well, I know. I, it's only been recently that I've thought that I could die, and I mean all this time, and then the pandemic came as I decided to retire after decades of teaching, and then people started dropping like flies, and going to a lot of Zoom memorials, and it's like, oh my, and some of these people younger than me, and I just thought, oh, maybe I should write a beneficiary on my bank statements. It's like it could happen, and I don't want it to go to the government. Whatever little I have, I wanted to go to something good. So anyway, so yeah, I just had never thought about it until like literally like now. Um, and now I'm a teeny bit in a panic, because since I'd never thought about it before, to be honest, I really didn't have time to think about it. I always had to work for a
Yeah,
living, as you know.
yeah.
I've worked since like decades, and so when you're busy having to always have a job and work, you're just trying to feed yourself and have a roof over your head. So and it, just didn't even occur to me.
If if you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh my goodness. I would say to her, all in good time.
Yeah, wow. That is good. Beautiful. How how do you find peace of mind?
It depends upon the unpeace that I'm having. So if something weird just happened, and I'm the adrenals start going, the arms start buzzing, and then I do breathing, the 5 in, the 5 out. Um, if I'm that kind of annoyed thing and I just need something quickly to turn my attention to something else, then I might put a video on that I know would be either educationally inspiring or humorous. Or if I'm just feeling a little unsettled, but just need some space, then I'll go outside and take a lovely walk, some streets over where there's some trees, and the trees are so big there's no sidewalks, and it's like, oh, it's pretty out here. It's okay. Nature's still here. The trees are still here. You're still here. So yeah.
These are beautiful. These are 5 quick Alan Watts questions
Okay.
off the top of your head in just a couple words. The first one is, who started it all?
They or we?
Are we going to make it?
Yes.
Where do we put it?
We put it anywhere that it's safe.
Who's cleaning it up?
We are.
5, is it
Oops, say that one more time.
is it serious?
Is it, sorry,
Serious.
serious? Oh. My initial response is yes, it is serious. Uh, and my backup is you gotta laugh.
Yeah.
So yes, and keep a sense of humor to do it.
Frank, Frank Zappa says, I'm very serious about being not serious. What is the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
The cultural shift is there are some places that are becoming more holistic thinking that didn't exist before. And being a more holistic thinker all along and not knowing that that was the name, and being frustrated, like when you go to a doctor and they said, well, I only treat this finger and this finger, you have to go another doctor to treat this one and this one. I'm a specialist. It's like, but didn't you go to medical school and know that, the thyroid is connected to the this and that is connected to that, and you're part of that? You can't help it all. You send me to 3 doctors for 3 different fingers. So there's more of there was even a cardiologist at UCLA who actually said that, you know, losing someone, that grief can cause a heart attack. They never used to say that, but now they actually add it to the list, between, cholesterol and high blood pressure, they add grief and loss. It's like, thank you, you know? Break your heart. It arrived for a reason, that term. So I like the fact that there's being more holistic thinking in different areas of our globe.
Yeah. Thornton Wilder, beautiful answer. I love that. Thornton Wilder said, art is confession, art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Um, that's so interesting because, I have people have different needs with their creativity, their writing, especially their poetry, and visual art and dance and, theater, music. There's some creativity like music if one is being autobiographical and there's no lyrics and it's just this mournful oboe, you immediately get sadness even though
Yeah,
you're not getting the words for
yeah,
sadness. um, so it can be beautifully autobiographical. um, so far, at least in my mature work, I I want it to be more universal, but that doesn't mean that one can't be autobiographical, because
yeah,
how many times has one told a story, a true story about themselves, and then and maybe you've said it out loud or in writing, and someone either writes to you or comes up to you after reading and said, "Oh, thank you, because I feel just like that,"
yeah,
and that was so helpful to know that you wrote about that.
yeah,
So it's important to share narrative autobiography, um, as a device for clarity and understanding and communication. But I also have, I want there to be space, not necessarily mystery, but some kind of abstraction where there's lots of room for different ways to enter the poetry and the artwork. So I'm not dictating a specific way to enter.
yes.
So,
That's really, really
uh,
good. Yeah,
like I did a piece, somehow I really like homonyms like so and so. So SOW, SEW. And, in some ways, maybe they're the same thing, right? That's both creativity, they're both making. And so playing with words back and forth when you read or it's where it's published, people can enter it and remember where these have come into their life, or where they will see them in the future, uh, how they connect to it, either by memory or their self experience or by something they've seen out in the world or something they want to do in the future.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Larkin, that's really beautiful. It evokes one of my mantras is words evoke more than their meaning.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so is that what like Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, the word wake means three or four different things. And like you said at the beginning, you could say wake, and that's what Joyce was saying. He was saying, everybody wake up. But it was based on a song about a guy's funeral service.
Right, right.
So it's like the opposite. So the other thing you evoked there was McLuhan's reworded Churchill. He said, "We shape our buildings, then they shape us." And McLuhan said, "We shape our tools, then they shape us." And the purpose for me of repeating aphorisms is to reinvent them. So yours would be, "We shape our stories, then our stories shape us." That you can actually shape people with stories, but
Yes.
but we're actually shaping the stories. So it's again that cyclical or circular motion that you're uh forever caught in the it's like the Mobius strip, or the snake eating its tail.
Mhm.
What gives you the most optimism?
The most what?
Optimism.
Optimism. I'd have to say the students that I've been lucky to work with,
Yeah.
because then you see, you literally see the possibility of the future. And when I see what they care about, um, I had a lot of students, sign up for the Peace Corps, after they graduated. That was their time. This, I want to do it now, and I can have the experience in the world and help people and see how others live and how I can help. And that just gives me great joy. Um, Another student is the head of a ecological organization, and working in the field, and she's also a wonderful artist, and when she's in the field, she like my dad, documents it with her paints and drawings, and to remember, and also to share. This is what's out there. This eagle is out there. you know so it just it and so many of my students have become teachers, and there they are teaching others. So I don't have kids, and it's just nice to see that maybe something I shared with them and they took with them is, now they're sharing with their students, and just goes on and on and on. And that gives me incredible satisfaction and hope and optimism for the future.
Yeah, that reverberation,
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful. I get that as the answer. The last question is, what gives you the most optimism? I usually get youth. Groucho Marx was asked that question at the end of his life, and he said, other people. And
Mm-hmm.
the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And you said connection. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really been a joy spending this time with another human being, especially because we sort of connected through the great Linda Albertano at
Yes.
service, and that is her reverberating, getting people together. Even when her physical body might have been not in that room, her spirit
Yeah.
was in that room, and she continues to be in our room all the time. That's
Yeah. I loved Linda Albertano. She
yeah,
was one of a kind spirit, and I'm sure glad that she was here with us when she was. And
yeah,
I just delight in the conversations I had with her when she was here. So thank you, Linda.
yeah. And it is, her spirit lives. This is the way she is. Life after death is by hooking us up together so more people can connect, like your connection word.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Larkin,
thank you so much for this invitation.
yeah,
Again, I mean, wow, it just helped me sort a life's living so far, how one operates in the world and what one thinks and interprets. So I've just appreciated this whole experience. What a joy, and and an adventure too. Jerry,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Larkin. And even though I'm going to hit the and even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope it never ends and we can keep
Same
talking
here.
forever.
I'll see you out there.
Okay.
Bye bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.